Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Brands from around the world want to sell their products in China. After all, the country is home to a 1.4 billion strong market, a population no other nation can fully match. But there's one problem. Business leaders from Steve Jobs to Elon Musk have to deal with in exchange for that market access. Many major brands have gotten dragged into years-long legal disputes to protect their trademarks. And to make things worse, the Chinese court system won't necessarily side with the established brands. Sometimes the real brands are even forced to apologize and pay millions of dollars in compensation to their copycats. That's all made possible by a practice known as trademark squatting. It's a technique often used by Chinese companies. First, they register trademarks for famous foreign brands, then sit on them. That way, when the real brand enters the China market, they can then sue the owner and demand money. The practice has survived because of a policy under the country's trademark law, which follows a first file, first serve principle, meaning whoever registers the trademark first gets it. Whereas in the U.S., it's given to the first company to widely use it. In this special report, we look at 7 companies that found themselves caught in the trap. Number 1, Apple. The world's second most valuable publicly traded company is one of the biggest victims of China's trademark law. It all started back when Apple first planned to introduce its signature product, the iPhone, to the Chinese market. The company soon found itself in a legal battle over the trademark because iPhone was already registered to a Chinese electronics maker. Apple later paid over $3 million to get the trademark transferred so that it could legally sell iPhones in China. The same fate later struck another of its star products, the iPad. Chinese courts banned Apple from selling its signature tablets in the country, as a Chinese company called ProView International already held the trademark. In 2012, after losing the case in several courts, Apple paid $60 million to ProView and settled the case. And those aren't the only Chinese companies Apple has had to deal with. In 2016, the tech giant lost another lawsuit against a Chinese firm that makes wallets, handbags, smartphone cases, and other leather goods. Its products all bear the name iPhone. A Chinese court rejected Apple's request to stop the company from using the trademark. Apple's legal battles in China continue today. Right now, the company is being sued for over $1 billion in damages by a tech company. The case marks the most expensive payout ever requested by a Chinese company from a foreign firm over patents. The company, Shanghai Zhizhen, alleges that Apple's voice recognition technology Siri violated its patent. The suit could potentially prevent Apple from selling many of its products inside China. On top of these disputes, Apple has to cope with the rampant counterfeit products produced in the country. China is even home to a near flawless yet fake Apple store. Reports say employees who work there genuinely believe they work for Apple. That sums up the ordeal for America's second largest company. Now let's turn to another top tech giant, which hasn't been spared from the China headache either. To watch today's full special report, click the link in the description down below. We are working with Epoch TV, and all special reports are published there in full length. Now we turn to today's daily news. International athletes are speaking out. Tennis superstar Naomi Osaka is the latest athlete to voice concern over Peng Shuai. The former Chinese tennis star has not been seen in public since accusing a former Chinese state leader of sexual assault. Osaka said on Twitter Tuesday, "Censorship is never okay at any cost. I hope Peng Shuai and her family are safe and okay. I am in shock of the current situation, and I am sending love and light her way." Peng once ranked world #1 in doubles. Earlier this month, she accused former Chinese Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli of coercing her into sex at his home 3 years ago. Her post on China's Twitter-like platform Weibo was up for just 30 minutes before Chinese censors deleted it. Her Weibo account has been blocked, and any mention of the accusation online has been wiped. Peng has not been seen in public since then for half a month. A growing number of international athletes have expressed concern, including men's world #1 Novak Djokovic.
It's shocking, that she's missing.
Tennis legend and 39-time Grand Slam championship winner Billie Jean King, former world #1 Chris Evert, and former top-ranking Martina Navratilova also expressed their concern. In addition, 3 tennis associations spoke out for Peng. The Women's Tennis Association called on Beijing to investigate Peng's allegations, saying she should be heard, not censored. Later, the association was joined by the ATP Tour, a worldwide top-tier tennis tour for men, as well as the U.S. Tennis Association. On Wednesday, a Chinese Communist Party's media mouthpiece said they saw an email from Peng to the Women's Tennis Association. In it, they said Peng denied she had disappeared. NTD contacted the association for comment but did not receive a response before airtime. The accused Zhang Gaoli is 75. He served in the Communist Party's highest leadership body, the Politburo Standing Committee. He retired as vice premier 3 years ago. Another issue from China sparks reactions in the international community. A Chinese security official's bid for a new job at a global policing body is raising alarm among lawmakers and rights activists, and they are warning their governments that electing this man would bring grave consequences. NTD's Juliet Song has more on that.
A top Chinese official is running for a post in the world's largest police organization, and 50 lawmakers worldwide are trying to stop him from getting it. The person in question is Hu Binchen. He's a senior official in China's Public Security Ministry, the security organ that protects Chinese Communist Party leaders. The lawmakers' concern is that Hu's election could allow Beijing to arrest dissidents around the world, like the tens of thousands of Hong Kongers and Uyghurs living abroad. This has to do with the authority of the police organization he's looking to work for. It's called the International Criminal Police Organization, or Interpol. Interpol is an intergovernmental agency and has almost 200 member countries. Police from those nations work together to track down criminals that have fled across borders. The way they do this is through a system of red notices. If a country wants to arrest a criminal that has fled to another country, it can submit a request to Interpol. After approval, Interpol then issues a red notice, alerting other member countries to locate and apprehend the wanted person. While this system can help bring criminals to justice, critics argue Beijing could also use it to go after dissidents. Among the critics is Sir Ian Duncan Smith, a British lawmaker.
People like myself, who are now sanctioned by the Chinese, could face red notices to countries that have extradition treaties with them.
Beijing sanctioned Smith over his criticism of China's human rights abuses. He's also among the 50 lawmakers warning their governments about the Chinese official's potential new job. Lawmakers argue Beijing has abused the red notice system to go after dissidents. For example, Morocco arrested a Uyghur activist named Idris Hassan earlier this July, under an Interpol red notice filed by China. Interpol later canceled the red notice, but Hassan could still face extradition to China. Another Uyghur activist, Duncan Isa, also got a red notice from Beijing. It lasted for almost 2 decades. Isa told NTD in an email that he was detained in multiple countries because of it, and the situation has led him to fear for his safety in democratic countries. Interpol removed the red notice on Isa in 2018. As for the Chinese official Hu Binchen, if he's elected, Hu would join a committee that supervises Interpol's day-to-day work. Smith argues electing Hu would be a step backwards.
I think for international institutions to accept somebody from a regime like that basically will pervert the institution itself. It should be manned by people from governments that are democratic and understand the importance of the rule of law, and that is not the case in the case of Hu Binchen.
He's also concerned about Beijing's influence on important international organizations.
It is all about, I think, China extending its influence into international institutions so that it can actually bend them to its own means.
Another British lawmaker is also voicing opposition to Hu's candidacy. He says the issue extends beyond the election itself.
Well, I think it's intertwined with many other things, with China's expanding military, its expanding overseas sort of ambitions. There are obvious concerns about the position with Taiwan at the moment. I think that's very, very live.
Beijing has been flexing its muscles toward Taiwan, regularly sending dozens of military aircrafts into the island's air defense zone.
For China to be given a more powerful role in Interpol, I just feel is a step in the wrong direction at this time. It needs to play the game as an international partner.
Interpol is set to vote on Hu Binchen's candidacy next week. NTD has reached out for comment but did not get a response before airtime. Juliet Song, NTD News.
The popular short video platform TikTok did collect data without users' consent, and its Chinese parent company is really paying compensation to users. The settlement is already underway. The company sent a notification to its users on Monday about claiming compensation. People who use the app before September could be entitled to money from a lawsuit against TikTok. The company says its Chinese parent company ByteDance proposed a $92 million settlement. It relates to a federal lawsuit that claims TikTok illegally collected and used people's personal data from the app. There is a federal U.S. law and an Illinois law that allows people to seek compensation when their data is harvested without consent. Users don't have to live in Illinois to claim their share, but Illinois residents could get up to 6 times more money. Users can file a claim on TikTokDataPrivacySettlement.com, but the piece of the pie may not be so big, as the settlement affects about 90 million TikTok users. As Chinese developer Evergrande scrambles to meet its debt obligations, its founder is trying to deal with the problem by selling luxury assets, including art, calligraphy, and 3 high-end homes. This, according to filings and a person with knowledge of the matter.
Ailing Chinese property developer Evergrande faces a battle to pay its debts. With around $300 billion in liabilities, it's been lurching from one deadline to another, often paying at the last minute. Now it looks like that's taking a very personal toll on Chairman Hui Ka-yan. He's reportedly been selling off luxury assets to help pay the debts. Filings at Hong Kong's land registry show he's pledged 3 luxury homes in the city to investors. Real estate agents say each is worth over $100 million. Then there are his aircraft. A Reuters source says Hui has sold 2 Gulfstream jets in recent weeks. Media reports say he also owns a private Airbus and a 60-metre yacht, but there is no word on their fate. Less obvious assets are also up for grabs. The source says the billionaire has also been selling some of his art and calligraphy collection. Hui rose from humble origins in a Chinese village. 4 years ago his net worth was estimated at $45 billion, but it's now thought to be down to around $11 billion. Chinese authorities have told him to use some or all of his wealth to help Evergrande honour its debts. There has been no word from him or the company on any of the reported sales. Hui is also a big collector of valuable koi carp, a traditional symbol of good fortune in Chinese culture. Right now, though, his fortune, in every sense, seems to be running short.
A new hashtag is going viral on Chinese social media. That's after President Biden's virtual meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. The hashtag reads, Biden reiterates he doesn't support Taiwan's independence. The hashtag has attracted over 200 million views and over 10,000 comments. Several major state-run news outlets also reposted the hashtag, including China's Central Television. But what's President Biden's actual stance on Taiwan? Here's what he said.
Our policy at all.
Can you clarify what the policy is? Because you said today independence, and in the past
I said that they have to decide. They, Taiwan, not us. And we are not encouraging independence. We're encouraging that they do exactly what the Taiwan Act requires. And that's what we're doing. Let them make up their mind. Period.
The Taiwan Relations Act is an important law dealing with America's relationship with Taiwan. It requires the U.S. to provide the island with enough arms so it can defend itself. People around the world have gotten vaccinated against COVID-19, but not all doses are created equal. Questions have come up surrounding the effectiveness of Chinese-made vaccines. And recent research from Chinese experts shows the country's jabs may do more harm than good. Nature's open access journal, Cell Discovery, published the research late October. It was conducted by a group of experts from Shanghai, Beijing, and Wuhan. The research recommends that people with pre-existing clinical conditions should be very cautious as to whether they should get the Chinese-made jab. The research found that the vaccinations consistently mimic an infection in the body, and that during research trials, healthy volunteers experienced a series of pathological changes throughout the body, including a decrease in their natural immunity. NTD interviewed Sean Lin, a microbiologist who worked for the U.S. Army, to hear his take on the research. Lin says the research surprised him. For one, the fact that antibodies generated by the vaccines disappeared quickly.
After 90 days, the antibodies completely disappeared, which basically means that the protection period of this vaccine is very short.
The research also shows that Chinese vaccines disturb the body's potassium and sodium balance.
For people with high blood pressure, the balance of sodium and potassium in the body is critical.
What's more, research indicates the Chinese vaccines elevate blood glucose and decrease kidney function and cause a higher risk of blood clots. Also among the most significant findings, doses made in China appear to weaken the body's ability to respond to viruses, especially for those who take the second jab 28 days after the first one. That's because the shots largely reduce a certain type of immune cell.
This shows things are not like what people believe, that one will immediately be super resistant to the virus after you take the Chinese jab. That's not the case. According to this research, it's quite the opposite. You are vulnerable before the second jab. Your immune system is fragile during this stage.
Sean hopes the research will be a wake-up call to China. That's despite the 2 billion vaccine doses already administered across the country. Lin says it's still questionable how much protection they actually bring. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.